So next, I'd like to share with you the reading of the day. And it is from Reverend Ken Gordon, the spiritual director of Centers for Spiritual Living. He says, empowerment, when you talk about protecting others, is such a vital thing. It is the difference between giving someone a fish sandwich and actually teaching them to fish. To empower somebody to become self-actualized and authentic is one of the most important aspects, one of the most important things that we do in this teaching. This teaching, after all, has a purpose of awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence. And that awakening requires that we empower those we are awakening. Anyone who is not empowered cannot be awake. Empowerment is vital to the growth and evolution of humanity. And so it is.
So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. The theme for the month of June is empowerment. I protect the vulnerable. And as it has been since the beginning of January, the first Sunday of the month has that same title. So the title is Empowerment. Now, this has been kind of an interesting week for me. Very early on, I recognized that I have never spoken about empowerment on a Sunday. That while I probably have spoken about concepts that kind of touch upon empowerment or are very similar to empowerment, I have never done a Sunday talk whose title was empowerment, or even a title who had as part of the title empowerment. So, okay, no problem. I just did the week like I normally do the week. Spent the week doing what I usually do. So I got quiet and I meditated on the topic. And I opened myself up to divine wisdom. And I stood in front of my bookshelves over in my office over there, just waiting for one or more books to kind of reveal themselves to you. You're doubting it, but they kind of poke out a little bit. They poke out a little bit, and then I say, oh, this one, and then I grab it, and sure enough, there's something in there. I check out YouTubes and TED Talks about the subject, and I kind of peruse the internet for articles. Now, my inner wisdom was uncharacteristically quiet this last week. Not always a good feeling. I could feel the energy of what I wanted to talk about, but I was having trouble finding the words that would really be able to express it in a way that expressed that feeling that I was feeling in me, the feeling of empowerment. And for the first time ever, not one single book, not one book poked itself out at me. And all of the articles that I saw on the internet they left me kind of unsatisfied. Now the YouTubes and the TED Talks, however, were a completely different story. Now there were many, many YouTubes and TED Talks about empowerment. And they ranged from educational to motivational and everything in between. Some of them were maybe only like a minute to 2 minutes long, and they basically just described the definition of empowerment. But then there were others that had specific people that came up and told the listener about their life, that told the listener about how they had motivated themselves or how they had empowered themselves to do the things that they wanted to do in their lives, to create the life of their dreams. Some of them were very broad, and others were really more specific. And then there were those empowering, motivational videos. Perhaps you know the ones I'm talking about. The ones that have these beautiful, expansive images, say, of the world or outer space, or maybe images of famous people doing really extraordinary things. They're the ones that have these dramatic Star Wars-inspired music that goes along with them, and they always have some really professional-sounding voice overlay. Usually it's a man, and usually he starts at the very beginning of the video in a voice that is as loud as he can do it. He's just like yelling his lungs out right from the very beginning. Like they talk about it in The Voice or what's the other one? American Idol. You know, you got to build. But they just start right at the very beginning on the top of their lungs. And then as the music and as the images become more and more dramatic, they somehow find a way to get even louder. They somehow find a way they find a decibel that's even a couple levels above where they started at. Like I didn't even know that decibel existed on the human plane. Have you seen these? You know what I'm talking about. Now, after watching a few of them, with like the third one being really the pièce de résistance, I found myself racing around my living room with my arms up over my head, a la Rocky Balboa, really wishing that I had a second story to my apartment so that I could climb the stairs and really experience the full effect. Now, I found I really recommend perusing some of these kind of videos as a way to really spend an afternoon. It's very empowering. Or to maybe even spend a week doing it like I did, which is probably why I'm a little fairly amped up right now. Now, surprisingly, the word empowerment doesn't exist in many different languages. While the word empowerment is used in many scholarly and practical disciplines such as community development or education or psychology or economics or the social sciences, there is no clear, unified definition that crosses all of those different discipline lines. No clear, unified definition. Now, at its very basic level, empowerment simply means becoming powerful. More specifically, empowerment is the process of increasing the capacity of individuals or of groups to make choices and to transform those choices into desired actions and desired outcomes. It is a multidimensional social process that fosters power in people to use in their own lives or to use in the life of their community by acting on issues that they define as important to them. Now, throughout this process of empowerment, an individual or a collection of individuals actually become agents of change. They become agents of change. This is like a really big deal. Empowerment challenges our basic assumptions about how things are, our basic assumptions about how they could quite possibly be. It challenges our assumptions about power and about failure and about achieving and about success. More simply put, it's the can-do factor that moves us from I can't to I can. Now, one understanding and usage of the word empowerment is often seen in a societal context. So social empowerment is understood as the process of developing a sense of autonomy, self-determination, and self-confidence in people and in communities in order for them to be able to represent themselves in a way that is responsible and self-determined. It allows them to act on their own authority. Now, social empowerment is also the degree to which people or particular populations within a society have access to resources. Now, those resources could be things like food or water or shelter or education or justice, to name just a few. Now, this idea of empowerment really looks at shared areas of concern and how we can assist others in developing that sense of autonomy for themselves. So yes, it is, as Dr. Ken Gordon said, it is important to give someone a fish sandwich, but it is even more important to be able to teach them to fish in order for them to be able to act on their own authority. This is social empowerment. On an individual level, individual or personal empowerment is having access to our own inner resources, to those qualities that we most value in ourselves. Now, it is about looking at who we are and becoming more aware of ourselves as a unique individual, different from every other individual on the planet. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and everybody has a range of skills and gifts that we use in our everyday lives. But often, too often, most people aren't even aware of them, or they undervalue them. They don't see them as, really true abilities or unique abilities, and so they undervalue them. Personal empowerment is all about becoming more aware of our strengths and our weaknesses and really, truly owning all of it. It is about taking control of our circumstances and becoming 100% responsible for our experiences. It's about taking opportunities to enhance personal growth and to expand upon the contribution that we make both as an individual and as a community member to the world at large. Personal empowerment is tapping into our imaginations and setting intentions and actually taking action to become our highest and best. Little wins along the way allow us to be able to develop new skills and to really broaden and increase our self-confidence, which is in itself absolutely essential to personal empowerment. Developing personal empowerment really requires us to make some fundamental changes in our lives. And that's not always easy to do. But the really good news is that there are many, many different ways that we can empower ourselves at different times and in different arenas in our lives. But the most important thing to know about personal empowerment is that we can't hitch our empowerment to our minds or our bodies or to anything outside of ourselves. And we can't rely on our bodies and our minds to always remain the same. Illness, aging, isolation, loneliness, grief, to name just a few of the things that could be going on in our bodies or in our minds that will affect this process of empowerment. Things outside of ourselves, they come and go. They are always changing, and they can never really be relied upon. So if many of the typical ways that we try to be empowered can be, fairly unreliable, then the invitation today is to lean into spiritual empowerment. Now, spiritual empowerment is the process by which we learn to turn within to access the only power that will never change. Spirit. The invitation is to discover the source of all power. Not just a little bit of power, but all power. That spark of the divine that is within us, and to deeply connect with that eternal source of that power. Spiritual empowerment, or authentic empowerment, is the ability to choose our attitudes, to choose our responses to what is going on around us, no matter what. It's the ability to stay grounded in the truth of who we are in any situation, under any circumstance, and to trust that the universe is always unfolding for our highest and best. To be spiritually empowered is to be free to choose how we are relating to the moment, to the day, or to the experience. It's choosing to be the captain of our ship and the master of our soul. The invitation is to put a pause on any experience in which we are having the overwhelming thought that life is not cooperating with me. Yeah, the ones of you that are laughing, you know the one that you know that thought that I'm talking about. The one we think that life is not cooperating with me. So the invitation is to stop and take a pause, take a breath before automatically launching into our normal go-to ways of being in the world, our normal patterns of being. The invitation is to take a moment and to look within. Are we sitting inside the small self and feeling insecure, or feeling judged, or trying to take control of the situation? Now, it's a very normal human thing to do when life is not cooperating with us and we're feeling disempowered. We always try to take control. We all have done it. We probably will continue at times to do that. It's a kind of a human condition. Now, this happens both individually and collectively as a community, as a country, or as a society. The question to ask ourselves is, how has that been working for us? The bottom line is that we cannot be shut down. We cannot be in resistance to what is, and we cannot be trying to control everything if we want to truly be empowered spiritually. So how can we come back home to that true, authentic spiritual empowerment? The first step is to investigate. Investigate, to look within, become aware of, and get in touch with the belief that is underlying the feeling that you are having in the moment. There's always a belief, a thought behind that feeling. So get in touch with that. Get in touch with the fear. Get in touch with the insecurity. Get in touch with the doubt. And without judging it or condemning it, simply notice it. And then name it. And then own it. Because the only way that can ever be healed is for each of us to bring that up and shine the light of truth upon it. So whatever it is, if it's not a quality of God, it's not the truth of who we are. And if it's not the truth of who we are, then in all probability it's something that we believe in because we believe in our separation from the divinity within us. Through our investigation, we might also find a whole lot of excuses. Excuses that we use to hold our spiritual empowerment at bay. Lauren Handel Zander, in her book, Maybe It's You, talks about talks about 8 excuses that do not allow us to allow that spiritual empowerment to flow through us. Ways that we hold it at bay, the ways that we stop our lives from really being empowered spiritually. Now, some of those excuses could include the "I don't care" excuse, in which we convince ourselves that we don't care or want whatever it was anyway. Could be the passive excuse, in which we complain that life is happening to us. It's beyond our control, and we are merely pawns in the whole affair anyway. Or how about the genetic excuse, in which we state we were born this way and we can't possibly behave any differently? Maybe the victim excuse, in which we say that nothing, absolutely nothing, is our fault. How about the everybody else excuse, in which we say it's okay because everybody else is doing it, or it's okay because nobody else is doing it? The past precedent excuse, the one in which we complain that we have never been able to do it before. We have tried many, many, many times, have never been able to do it. Nothing has ever worked, so why should I believe that that's ever going to change now? Why should it happen any differently? The how things are excuse, in which we say that what we want is not possible for us because we had a really messed up childhood. And because I can't get past that messed up childhood, I will never be able to have a good life. And lastly, the done enough excuse, in which we affirm to ourselves and anybody that will listen that we have done enough already, and that nobody else, including ourselves, should ask us to do any more. Now, I'm not asking anyone to out yourselves, but to just simply take a moment to really see if any or all of these excuses lie within you. And to really know that we may never be able to come back to that true, authentic, spiritual empowerment with any or all of these excuses running the show. So that first step is to really investigate. Reverend David Alt says, "This energy of curiosity heals. It lifts me out of silent condemnation, and it meets with inner understanding and insight. My roots of trust about myself and my ability to evolve grow deeper and deeper every time I lead with curiosity about my behaviors rather than condemnation. It reminds me that nothing out there can ever destroy my trust in a perfect patterning of unfoldment for the highest good." Ernest Holmes says, perfect God, perfect man, perfect life. The second step is to really call out to the highest aspect of our being, the most awake and aware aspect of our being. The invitation is to tap into that inner divinity, to be open to it, to align with it, to surrender to it, and to allow it to flow through and as us. When we allow the universe to flow through us, that is spiritual enlightenment. Every time that we can pause and even get a taste, just a taste of the spiritual enlightenment that is available to us, our lives become richer and fuller. Every time that we can shift from trying to find power outside of ourselves through domination or manipulation or holding people outside of our hearts or putting others down to empower ourselves or any other way that we try to take control of the situation and allow ourselves to be open to the love, the peace, the joy, the creativity, the abundance, the peace of the universe, our lives become richer and fuller. Every time that we align with that power and presence that is greater than we are, the power and presence that created the entire universe, our lives become richer and fuller. Anytime we allow that which is already within us to empower us, our lives become richer and fuller. Now, these two steps are not just valid for ourselves and for our own lives, but also to use with others to empower them. Anytime we assist another person to recognize the divinity within themselves, we are empowering them. Anytime that we reflect back to them the truth of who they really are, we are empowering them. The tagline for the theme of the month of June is, I protect the vulnerable. Vulnerable means being capable of or susceptible to being wounded or hurt or open to criticism or judgment or temptation. Now, in the world of form as human beings, isn't that all of us? Don't we all, at some point in time in our lives, experience something, some circumstance, some situation in which we feel vulnerable? Aren't we all worthy of protection? Aren't we all worthy of empowerment? If we really want to live in a world that works for everyone, we owe it to that world to empower ourselves and to empower everyone else. I invite you to just turn within for a moment and really take in this quote by Oprah Winfrey. She says, every life is enhanced by the sharing and the giving and the opening up of heart space. Your life gets better when you can find a way to share it with someone else. The real empowerment comes when every person leaves this room and makes a decision. The true decision is, how will you use yourself? How will you use everything that you have been given to serve that which is greater than yourself? How will you use that to become truly, authentically empowered? Your legacy is every life that you touch. As you leave here today, the decision is, whose lives will that be? How will you use yourself in such a way that your impact and your legacy will live beyond the doing? Take a deep breath. So the invitation today is for all of us to be that space and that place of empowerment for ourselves and for each other. And so it is. Please turn within. Please turn within. With my eyes closed, I am acutely aware of that power and presence within me and surrounding me. I call it God, but it goes by many different names. Spirit, first cause, life, love, peace, the Buddha, Allah, Brahman, many, many different names. But still that one God. That one power and presence that created everything, seen and unseen. I know that it is eternal. I know that it is benevolent. I know that it is omniscient. Everywhere at all times, in its fullness and in its wholeness, and energy with no circumference and points of center everywhere. And I know that I am one of those points. That I was created by God out of God's stuff. And just as I know that this is my truth, I know that it is absolutely true for each and every single one of us here this morning, each and every single one of us within the power of the sound of my voice. And it's from that place of unity, deeply connected to each other through that golden thread of God's stuff, that I speak these words about and for each of us individually and collectively as the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living, knowing that truly we are spiritual beings having a human incarnation, that we have everything that we need within us to live the life of our dreams. That this idea of empowerment works in so many different ways, on a social level, on a personal level, and on a spiritual level, and that we can tap into each and every single one of them to empower ourselves and to empower each other in the most magnificent and wonderful ways, and knowing that the outcome looks something like Karen Daly sitting up here and singing with the voice of an angel. Something great happens out of our yes to align with that presence that is within us, our yes to being open to it, our yes to surrendering to it, our yes to allowing it to flow through and as us. Something amazing happens in our own lives and in the lives of our family, our friends, our community, this center, and the world. We can't imagine how far one little piece of empowerment can go, whose lives it will touch. But I know that it will touch lives. And I'm so grateful to know this truth, so grateful to speak these words, so grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into that law that only ever says yes, that my words are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them and I release them, letting go and letting God simply be God. And I invite each of us to anchor this prayer for ourselves and for each other, simply by saying, "And so it is, and so it is, amen."